those watching and listening around the world. This is Shelor.
2, 1. All right. So, Dr. Mark Ryall. Ryall?
Yep.
Thank you for joining today. Really appreciate your time being here. I did a little research on you, and I know that it seems like you've been teaching mathematics and economics for 24 years. You're also a cross-country coach, an artist. You've even competed or represented Canada in the World Age Group Triathlete Championships. And now you wrote a book. How did you find time to do all this?
Yeah, well, the book I started about 10 years ago, and I just got it going. I did some research into aging and anti-aging and reverse aging. I found out there is a lot of good science on that front, so I was pretty intrigued by that because of, like you mentioned, I was doing triathlons, and I'm getting older now. I'm in the 60 to 65-year-old age group, so I don't compete against the really young bucks, but at the World Championships, still these guys in my age group are very serious. They do 2 or 3 workouts a day, and it's funny because even those people who are in that age group, they can tell the difference between a few years. So I remember this one guy who was 64 years old talking, and we were at a bar having a couple of drinks afterwards, and he was talking to this guy who was 61, and he said to the 61 guy, "You got a big advantage over me." And he could feel that 3 years. And so, I started researching this. I became very intrigued by it. And when you're intrigued by something, you got the time, you can find the time. So even though I was teaching, I still have my summers off and holidays and Christmas holidays and all that. So I sort of put together the draft for the book. Chris, I did that about 10 years ago. and then, but I've only published it this year because I really couldn't find an official traditional publisher back then. And that's not too surprising. It's hard to crack into the market when you're a brand new author. And science fiction is extremely competitive. So I wasn't too surprised. I just left it there and then sort of fine-tuned it over the next few years. And then this year with COVID and all that and just retiring from teaching, I had lots of time. So I really updated all the science, had some editors look at it very seriously. And I changed a number of chapters, added some number of chapters, threw some stuff out. And then I was very confident in publishing it, and I self-published it, which is another thing that's changed in the last 10 years. Self-publishing is much more viable. So, I found the time, but it took a while. Yeah, it was 10 years in the making.
Gotcha. Well, 10 years ago is about when. So your book deals with, like you just said, increasing, I guess, lifespans and age. But 10 years ago is when when I say CRISPR, it's an acronym, and that's about when the technology started coming about. Is that correct? 10 or 12 years ago?
Yeah. So 10 or 12 years ago, we just started hearing about these things, but it really blossomed and took off in the minds of the public. I would say a couple of years ago when Jennifer Doudna, Dr. Doudna, and Emmanuel Charpentier, Dr. Charpentier, those two women scientists really upgraded in the CRISPR technology, and they won a Nobel Prize for it. So this is just 2020, year 2020. They got the Nobel Prize, and then things really took off. Walter Isaacson came out with a book this year called The Code Breaker, and it's nonfiction, but it's a bestseller. And also things like that have happened. And so now it's really accelerated, and it's going to be incredible to see what happens in the next 10 years.
So let's explain. I have a vague definition of what CRISPR and genetic engineering is. So maybe we should explain that to people before we start diving deeper in it. So basically, it's manipulating DNA where you take the bacteria and it's almost giving it an immune system to certain viruses, correct? And then you can subtract and add DNA to basically whatever you want to down the DNA sequence.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a method of literally editing, changing, altering your genetic code of humans or living organisms. It's pretty fundamental because you're literally changing the basic structure of say a human. So it could lead to physical changes, like, for example, I mentioned aging, stopping aging, and all the diseases that go with aging, that correlate with it. So that's pretty physical, but it also can lead to psychological things. You think of all those things like creativity, intelligence, ambition, that are also related to genetics. So those things are also on the table, the psychological things. So that's pretty fundamental. Though so far in history, we haven't really done that. We've done it with crops and things like that, but we haven't done it much with humans. Natural selection has, obviously gone on in the background, but it's a very slow process, and we have not evolved through natural selection very quickly at all in the last several hundred years. It can't happen that quickly, but this is going to be hyperbolic speed. It's going to be happening. It's already happening now, and it's going to take right off. And so rather than nurturing humans and sort of helping them out with medicine and exercise and diet and social services and all that, we are actually going to change humans. We're going to fundamentally alter what it means to be human. And that's a big pivot in human history.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of going back on what you said. Oh, that was my dog right there. Going back on what you said about psychologically and physically changing, and then also aging, and with the diseases that come with aging. David Sinclair, I don't know if you know who that is, but he's a genetics professor at Harvard. And I was listening to a podcast with him, and he talked about how, I think it was a Chinese researcher developed, or he made 2 twin girls, and that they were immune to HIV. And I think he got a lot of backlash for it because he kept it quiet, and then he presented it just kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah, so He Jiankui is the name of that scientist from China. He is now in jail and was fined and imprisoned for what he did, because he crossed a sort of a moral into a moral zone that the sciences of the world do not want people doing right now. And then what he did is we mentioned the HIV. He took these embryos and he altered the genetic code in them to make them resistant to HIV using genetic engineering. But the problem with that is now that that genetic code is it's inheritable. So it's now in the gene pool for humans, and they really don't want people doing that right now. So Dr. Sinclair was right to mention that, and many of the scientists in the world were quite upset by that, and even the Chinese government clamped down. Dr. Sinclair, you mentioned him. He's a pretty cool guy because he's looking into reversing aging. He is using dogs right now, I believe, and trying to stop and reverse aging. And he does it not so much by changing the genetic code, which I mentioned before, but by changing the epigenome, which is sort of like, okay, you've got the genetic code, but you've got this epigenome, which is the way which sort of reads the code. It's almost like you have a book, which is the code, and then you have a reader of a book, and every reader sort of takes something different away from the book,
Sure.
The way they interpret it and all that.
Sure.
Well, he's working on the epigenome, which is a whole other fascinating area, still involving genetics, but not necessarily CRISPR itself. So really cool stuff, but also dangerous stuff, like you mentioned with the Chinese scientists.
He's also working, Dr. Sinclair, also working on, fixing blindness too, correct?
Yeah. And I don't know a lot about that sort of trajectory on his research.
I just wanted to throw that out there. But this is, a lot of people, I guess you talked about morals and values, that you're almost playing God with this type of technology and research. But I mean, one of the positives, just as we mentioned, that if you can, take away certain diseases as, the human body gets older, it's almost, I would see that as a win. And plus, if, and reversing your age, if there was a perfect age for someone who just say, yeah, I'd like to be 24 my whole life, or the rest of whatever, if you're immortal or whatever. So, but yeah, a lot of people would say, no, this is too much. Like, and I don't know your background in religion, and I don't care, but I feel like that's what a lot of people would say. No, this is not what God would want, or this is just playing God.
Right on. Yeah. Well, I think it's very exciting. A lot of really amazing things are going to happen. Like you mentioned, eradicating disease. Let's look at something like Huntington's disease or cystic fibrosis. Those are actually, I actually know people with both, not the same person, but two different people with those diseases. And it's very difficult on the families. They often die early. These people, they suffer a lot. And both of those diseases, Huntington's and cystic fibrosis, are fairly simple genetically. For example, cystic fibrosis, I think, is just one base pair that is flipped. The C and the G base pairs, those nucleotides are flipped to G and C. So you could go in there and theoretically, genetically modify that and solve cystic fibrosis. Theoretically, I don't think they've done it yet. But the other one is Huntington's. It's according to Francois Bélis, who's up here in Canada at Dalhousie University. That's a prime candidate because, again, it's a fairly simple. I think it's just one gene that's involved, and so that horrible affliction could also be eradicated. And I think most people, like you and I, and most people would say that's good. Let's go for it. There's no big negative to that. But there's a whole other, and I'd love to be able to talk about this if we could, some other areas that would give me pause and I think will be a moral issue and argument for a lot of people, whether it's religious or not, to whether we should do this, spend money on this, attempt to this. There's a lot of stuff that's in a gray area, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can talk about whatever you want. Well, I mean, is this technology receiving a lot of funding, maybe through government, or is it all just privately based?
It's a hodgepodge. So, for example, in China, the Natural Science Foundation is huge there. In the United States, the National Institutes of Health and other like universities are involved, but also private companies are heavily involved. Even Jennifer Doudna, I mentioned, who got the Nobel Prize, she's involved with a company called Intellia. So it's really a hodgepodge of private, public, and huge public funding, and scientists and business people and politicians all involved.
And I don't know how I want to say this, but do you think that because of those moral values, politicians and governments might stay away from publicly addressing that, or is just because of the backlash they might receive, and they don't want the public looking negatively towards them?
Yeah, well, actually, in my book, Age Decoded, what I focus on a physical and a psychological, and the physical is stopping aging, and the government really wants to do that because they know they will become quite popular. So it's I mean, that's not that everybody goes for it, but I would ask you or your listeners to think, if somebody offered you not to get any older, maybe even get younger, reverse your aging a bit, would you go for it if it's safe? And also, if you can reverse it, like say you don't like it, you can stop it and go back. I think most people would go for it, especially if it's free. In my book, it's free, publicly funded. The government wants to push it out there to remain popular. And most people go for it. And my book is about the implications of, okay, now that most people have gone for it, what's life really like? How did society get changed? And then my book has this more secretive psychological manipulation that's happened that people don't know about. So,
yeah, there's talking about reversing age, and like that was, I'm turning 35 this year, and I just competed in a CrossFit competition yesterday. And,
awesome, good.
Yeah, and that's why I was able to do this yesterday. But some of them young bucks, like we were talking about earlier, they're 25 or 27. It's like, man, I wouldn't mind taking 10 years. Getting back that 10 years back. But there's a Greek tale. And I don't know if you've heard it, but and I'm probably going to get the names or butcher their names if I remember it right. But I think it's Aurora, and she was a goddess, and she fell in love with a mortal, and she asked Zeus to give them immortality. But in which he did, he took pity on him and gave it to him. But The problem was that they didn't ask for external youth, and that they got to live forever, but they kept the aging process and basically just turned into a bag of bones.
Oh, yeah.
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 And so that makes you think like, yeah, I would like, and when you start thinking about immortality and if you would like to live forever and stuff, you got to kind of, I think I would, but at also, at a good age and where my brain works and I don't have any, I have a good quality of life, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. In my book, there's one intriguing character who I really enjoyed writing about. And he became a stronger character. He was a minor character, but as I wrote it and did more drafts, I gave this guy more voice because he was 76 years old, quite frail, but still able to think well. And he's sort of like almost like a Buddhist-like thinker, very mindful, very thoughtful. And he's frozen at 76, but like he said, he sort of regretted stopping aging and going for it because he said, I'm really just at the precipice of death. I'm so frail physically. I'm looking at death all the time and I'm just not quite there. And he lives for 200 years like that, but he sort of regrets doing it, to be honest. But then when they bring in reverse aging later in my book, he's very tempted by that, right? Because that would change everything for him. So that's his big decision. I won't give away his decision, but that's his decision point later. Should I go for it?
Gotcha. So, from being a triathlete, I don't know, and a cross country coach, and as you got older, is this what inspired you to kind of get into or start looking up genetic engineering and kind of wanting those years back of being in your prime? I guess one would say.
Yeah, I probably would never have had done this book if I hadn't gotten into competitive running and then triathloning. And I never would have gotten into running if it weren't for my daughter, actually, because my daughter, when I was about, 45 years old, she was 8 or 9 years old and she started running. And that's sort of unusual for a kid that age to want to run around the block and time themselves and all that, right? Yeah. So I said to my wife, I better go and run with her because she can't be out on the streets, all over the place on her own, right? So I grabbed a pair of jogging shoes and started going with her. And so she got me into the aerobic exercise, ironically. And she still is. She's a competitive runner. She runs at the university level and she does trail runs and all that. So I'm very proud of her. But yeah, so it's actually because of her, I would say. It's funny how life works, eh?
That's interesting.
Yeah, it got me into this, which got me really to doing the book and being on your podcast, which, by the way, I'm very happy that you had me.
I appreciate your time. I enjoy talking about, interesting topics like this just because, I hear about, like something from David Sinclair, and that makes me, think about, man, there's got to be more to this and stuff like that. But yeah, let's talk about more of the athletic side of it.
Sure.
So if this technology gets wild and crazy, it could affect athletes of, I could turn into the next LeBron James, I guess, if I wanted to.
You sure could.
Yeah. So is there going to be any type of regulations on this?
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah, there will. In fact,
regulate it, I guess.
The World Anti-Doping Agency, I did check, and they already have a policy against genetic engineering to enhance sports. So they wrote that about 6 years ago. So they're sort of on top of this. But like with steroids, it's not easy to control. And some athletes and coaches will push the envelope, right? So you can write all the policies you want, but I think genetic engineering is going to be, it's going to be used to enhance sports, make people stronger, faster, whatever. Yeah.
Have you ever seen the documentary Icarus?
No, I have not.
So, it's kind of related. It's on Netflix right now, and it talks about the Russians and the Sochi Olympics and how you talk about doping and blood doping and stuff. But it was, I forgot the director of it, but he did the same thing that Lance Armstrong was doing, was using his red blood cells to carry more oxygen through gene doping or blood doping. But it goes into detail about how Russia figured out how to get around, I guess, the drug testing, and they were using these I forgot what company it was, but they used these special bottles that nobody could break open. But but apparently Russia figured it out, and they were like hiding stuff through walls, and they were able to change out pee with clean pee, and still able to compete in the Olympics. But it wasn't until after that, the whistleblower finally figured it out. The guy that was helping, I think his name was Bob. No, I don't remember his name, but helping him to do the races and see how much better he would do just through blood doping. And
yeah,
really
I think. I do think it could be a big issue. Maybe not immediately, but in 5 or 10 years, let's say, as this technology becomes more and more efficient, and it's costly too. So not every athlete's going to be able to just do this, take a steroid, but a very sophisticated operation like a country backed like Russia or whatever, China. I could see China or somebody with a sophisticated apparatus could take a shot at this. And some people think it's fair because like some athletes are good because they're just blessed with good genes, right? So why can't other people access good genes of their own, right? So it's like it makes it, yeah, and that's an interesting argument too, right? So, but we'll see. Yeah, I do think it will be, the sports world will be affected by this. I do think so.
And not only the sports world, but I mean, you talked about it's changing your psychological manner, and that maybe get better. But I think you used the word creativity, and I'm sure. What is this? Would this be available for, let's say, someone like me to buy this this technology on the black market, and not if I figured out how to do it, I could go in there and subtract and add my own DNA, what I want, and just sitting in my own house? Yeah,
apparently people are already doing this, ingesting products that they think will change their genes. I'm not sure how much efficacy there is on those yet, but I think it'll probably be available. Yeah. And the psychological thing is intriguing too, because a lot of sports psychology is important, but even not sports. Let's say something like I was just reading something the other day about the bipolar disease, which is another horrible affliction. I know somebody with that too, and they discovered. It was a research institute in New York. I think it's called the Icahn School of Medicine in New York, and they discovered something like 60 or 65 genes involved with that disorder. So that's pretty complex. You got that many genes, but and 30 or so of those were brand new. They had no idea, so they thought it was about half that number of genes. But anyway, they use like complex correlations with genetic codes that they see, and then the people who have the disorder, and they sort of do correlations and all that. So they figure it's 65 genes. But the interesting thing is something like 17 of those genes were also associated with schizophrenia. And then 7 or 8 were also quite associated with depression. So that just shows you how complex we are as humans, right? You've got overlapping genes and overlapping conditions. So it's just not so simple. Let's say you wanted to eliminate schizophrenia by editing those 67 genes, you're probably going to affect depression or eliminate bipolar. I meant you could affect schizophrenia and depression, and it may not be in a good way. It could be. So let's go back to something positive like intelligence or creativity. They are they're researching that and trying to figure out which genes are involved, and that's complex too. But let's say you do improve. Creativity, you may also increase the chances of schizophrenia or something like that, right? Who knows? Those two could be really correlated. I'm thinking of John Nash, who won the Nobel Prize. You remember the movie The Beautiful Mind? He was schizophrenic and very creative, and a lot of very creative people have mental disease of other sorts. So who knows how these things are all overlapping in the complex way that God or whoever you believe designed us, right?
Right. So you talking about eliminating depression, or will we see any side effects if somebody came in and changed my DNA code? I mean, would there's got to be something else that would happen.
There is, and I mentioned Françoise Balise up here in Canada. She wrote a book called Altered Inheritance, and she she's brilliant, and she talks about the unintended effects, the side effects of CRISPR technology. Said sort of a warning signal on that. But CRISPR is only the technology of today. It's pretty good, but there will be other technologies that will probably replace. I was just reading about something called I think it's called RLR, Harvard University, which is retro library. I should know the acronym, but recombinating. So yeah, retro library, quite a yeah. So they feel that will be more efficient than CRISPR and safer with less of those, what you said, side effects or negatives. So it's all evolving, and it's so exciting. I'm pretty upbeat on this actually, but I am nervous about, like, as with any new technology, like say nuclear technology, the way that worked out, right, for humans.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of good things here in Ontario. We have something like 50 to 60% of our energy is provided by nuclear, and which is one of the best of the world on that front. And most of the rest is hydroelectric. So we have almost zero. We don't have any coal plants or anything. We have a little bit of gas plant, but so most of our electricity is renewable, and we're one of the leaders. Nuclear has been great in many ways, but we've had proliferation of nuclear weapons and treaties that try to stop that, and the bomb has been used a couple of times. We have to always watch that, right? So I think genetic engineering is going to be like that. It's going to be so profound, but we're going to have to watch it carefully and harness it positively.
Yeah, I got a couple thoughts on what you just said, and hopefully I don't forget them. But that's impressive that Ontario is using that much renewable energy. I've been trying to keep up to a little bit with that, and I think Greenland or Iceland's doing that as well, and they use almost geothermal energy, and it's almost 100%. Yeah. And but like you just said that. Hopefully we don't blow ourselves up one day with a nuclear bomb and end civilization. But could this be, this genetic engineering and using CRISPR is just a new technology itself, 10 to 12 years old, like we said earlier. So, and look at, where computers are today compared to where they were first at. But do you think this is something that will take our civilization to longer periods in the future? Like, your book is I think it's 100, 200 years in the future. I mean, we'll colonize Mars with this technology, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I think colonizing Mars will involve all sorts of technologies, right? Like artificial intelligence and whatnot. I had a bit of fun with that in the book too, because I've never written fiction. I've never tried science fiction. So I did have to project going 200 years into the future in but in the main localities are New Orleans and New York. And I've been to both of those cities, but I don't know them very well. So I had to research them and try to figure out what are they going to be like in 200 years. And is New York going to have a subway? And is that big causeway, the like Pochetta train in New Orleans, is it going to be? Are you going to be able to ride bikes over there, e-bikes? Because right now I don't think you can, right?
I don't think so.
So I added that in just for, but there's going to be so many other technologies. In my book, I add in a neurophysiological element too, because I think that things like smartphones, which have obviously revolutionized us, won't be around. It'll be more like a neuro-integrated device where you, rather than, pressing buttons on your smartphone, you just sort of think the commands in your mind, and then you can see the screen in your mind and project it to others and even communicate with others through that mechanism. So that neuro-integrated, I call them neuro-integrated transmitters. Well, I think something like that will be there. I really tried to write the book as if, okay, I think this really is what's going to happen. I'm not trying to make it pie in the sky. And in all honesty, I didn't involve any other planets. I tried to keep it right on Earth, New York, New Orleans, and really based on the science that I see right now. So that's called hard science fiction, where you're trying to project based on the current scientific principles. You're not trying to do something really crazy, which is more fantasy science fiction.
Talk about artificial intelligence, and do you keep up with Elon Musk at all?
Yeah, I do, and go ahead. Yeah.
So you were talking about using our phones, and he's working on, and I don't know how far he's into it, but the Neuralink, have you heard about that? And where he's going to, I think it's an inch diameter, drill into your head and place get that device inside your head, but it's also going to act as a phone, and you won't even need your phone. And that, he even stated that a quadriplegic would be able to walk again and almost even have better motor control.
Yeah, if I was graduating right now or going into college right now, I would study neurophysiology. I think that's going to be a very exciting front. And that's exactly what Musk is talking about. Yeah. So yeah, that sort of thing is in my novel, I call them NITs, Neuro Integrated Transmitter. And then later in my novel, they become PICO Neuro Integrated Transmitters. And that PICO model, which is really hard to detect, it's much smaller, becomes important for my heroine, who is trying to deal with the government, and she designs a PICO Neuro Integrated Transmitter. But that's about 240 years out. So
nice. Well, I mean, I thought about that neurotransmitter, and he was talking about we could communicate without using words, and I think it's going to be. I'm really interested in it, but I don't know if I would want to be an early adopter to it.
Yeah. In my book, there's some nervousness about it. And actually, a lot of people don't trust them because they feel like maybe the government or someone else, maybe a corporation, can listen in. So they don't they can communicate using these things without using their vocal cords, just like you would, message on a smartphone. But a lot of the people will communicate what's called naturally, just like literally talk to each other when they're nervous about who's tracking them. But the other thing is there's a little bit of suspicion that that the government can also read your thoughts using these things, which that's different than reading what you're saying to other people, literally reading all your thoughts, your self-thoughts. And that's a scary proposition, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, reading thoughts is real scary. And man, you just blew my mind with that one. Just because, I mean, I've been trying to read up a little bit on free will and determination, and they got into talking about how, when I say they, Sam Harris in his book, but talking about how, our thoughts might come, they don't really know where thoughts come from, but they come from us subconsciously almost. And
right.
If somebody can read your thoughts before you even think of it, I guess is just mind blowing to me.
I think it's going to be part of the package, because if you think about it neurophysiologically, to be able to communicate with someone else, whatever that Elon Musk device or whatever is hooked into your brain, it must be reading your thoughts itself, right? So it's taking your thoughts and transmitting them to us. So I don't think it's much of a step to say, well, maybe they can just read your thoughts. Like, who cares if it's being transmitted? Just stop there, read your thoughts. So that's again, it's a double-edged sword, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, going back on morals and values, I mean, just, do you want people reading your thoughts? And
I don't.
Yeah, I'd rather not either, just because, you got to have some sense of privacy.
Yeah.
You don't want everything you're thinking out there to the world, which some people might not care about that, but.
Yeah. So in 1984, and some of these other novels, the government can sort of, and I'm not totally anti-government, but someone, let's say, a bigger entity can see what you're doing, right? What room you're in, and they can see. That's the nervous part for them. But this is different. This will be they can not just see you, but see your mind and what's going on there.
I mean, it's almost superhuman power. This thing that way.
Yeah, exactly. So things like facial recognition and all these technologies are all inching towards that, right? We have to, and that's why Françoise Baylis, I go back to her book, she said we need a social consensus on this. So you can't just have politicians, corporate pharmaceutical companies, and large government funding agencies. We need regular people like you and I, all the people involved in these decisions about genetic engineering, whether it's athletes or scientists or medical people, because it's got such wonderful possibilities. But we do need to watch it, and we need a broad consensus and a sort of a very close participation and watching on all of this. So that's her message in the book. I think it's a great book. I'm going to mention again, it's Altered Inheritance by Françoise Baylis. It's released by Harvard University Press. She just published it about 6 months ago, I think. So Altered Inheritance.
Yeah, I wrote that down. I've been taking little notes here and there while we've been talking. Well, I mean, I don't want to be too cheesy, but they say, great power becomes great responsibility, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
Peter Parker and Spider-Man, I think said that, or his uncle did. But, so we're talking about sci-fi into the future, 100, 200 years. Do you believe in, the multi-universe theories or simulation theories? Anything like that?
I'm not up on that, and you're not talking about singularity here. You're talking more like in the universe.
Yeah, so
almost like a singularity for the universe.
It just kind of hit me while we were talking about Elon Musk, but he was on a podcast talking about living in he thinks that we're living in a simulation, and there's also another theory that there's infinite, Chris's and Marks out there in the world doing infinite things or having almost the same conversation, but in a different way, or
yes,
X, Y, and Z. So, I mean, just talking about sci-fi, and simulation, and this seems to be like kind of a popular topic right now, and it's just thought I would just hit on it a little bit.
Yeah, so that's a little beyond my interest right now, but it's still maybe good for a sequel, right? Like get a little bit beyond New York, New Orleans, and the Earth, and really go crazy with this stuff. Elon Musk. I mean, I would never negate anything he says. I think he's a brilliant thinker, and he's really he's audacious and he's bold, and he's a voyager. And somebody I answer a lot of questions in Quora. I have a lot of fun with Quora, and somebody, I think the question said, who's the bravest inventor of all time? And I put down him as one of the examples of a very brave inventor, entrepreneur.
Yeah, he's not afraid to take chances, it seems, and he's trying to think of new things, and I guess he doesn't. I think he's also working on those hypertunnels to get to LA to New York in hardly no time, and so I mean he's like you said, he's brave and not afraid to take chances, and we need people like that.
Absolutely. So but I'm really not that well versed on the more like the alien or other universes, planets. But nothing's out of another message I'd send to your listeners is you're never too old to stop learning and to explore things like that. So maybe I will look a little bit into that.
It's kind of fun. I like, since it seems like there's a lot of alien talk, and those theories come out nowadays. I like to kind of hit on it just to see what other people's, how their brain's working on that, especially that here recently. I don't know how it works for Canada, but the U.S. there, when they did that last stimulus bill, I think they gave the government 90 days to release all their UFO technology or what they have on UFOs. And I don't really know what came of it. I don't think there was. I think people just kind of ignored it. But it seems like now there's a lot more alien sightings and that we hear about more, and that could be something because we all have a camera or a phone at our, like you said, at our hip at all times. So
yes, exactly.
And then we were talking about. A lot of people, I don't say a lot of people, but there's also a theory that aliens kind of help jumpstart the human species to get us along our way, and that now that we developed nuclear bombs and things, they're coming back and checking on us to make sure we're not blowing ourselves up.
I wonder how we're doing on the report card.
It's just like they're coming down here.
B minus.
Yeah, they're like, man, what are these guys doing down there? Why are they fighting? We got to go back and stop this. So
it's funny.
Well, let's jump back into your book here.
Sure.
So, why you said it was hard to crack to publish your book? So you self-published it.
Yes.
Is this the book industry, like you said, that's that tough being a new author?
It's very tough. I'm thinking back 10 years ago. I couldn't get a publisher to even read one sentence of my book. if you sent them, say, I've got this great book, here's the outline, it's all about genetic engineering. You can send them a nice email with a description and some sample chapters. I couldn't get anybody to read. I mean, I would get rejection letter after rejection letter saying we're not interested in this, or you don't have a platform, or so. I probably sent out about 50 or 60 queries to the various publishers, New York, Toronto, other areas, California. And there was one publisher who was a little bit interested in that. Unfortunately, they went bankrupt, so that didn't help me. But not because of me, because they never had time to get to my book. But that was too bad. And then, although recently I've had a publisher about 2 weeks ago reach out to me, so maybe through self-publishing, a traditional publisher picked this up, because my book is only available in ebook right now, and I'd love to make it a print book. So I would collaborate with a traditional publisher. They would help me on that front and maybe get a little more international exposure too. So it's the way it works now is a lot of people love self-publishing because you have way more independence. Nobody tells you what to put in there. You put in what you want on the book. You craft it the way you want. You put nobody vetoes your cover page, your title page, or your cover design or anything like that. And also you retain a lot more of the royalties. Like if I sell a book for $10, I keep about $7, which is pretty high. Not that I'm out to make any money, but if you went with a traditional publisher, there's no way you might be lucky to keep $2 or $3, right? So, there are advantages to self-publishing. A lot of people have been very successful self-publishing one book after another, and they have a website, and they are their own publisher. They figured it out. So whereas I'm still on the fence. I'm happy doing the self-publishing right now, but I am collaborating with a publisher right now and maybe looking into going beyond just self-publishing.
I like how you said that you're the self-publishing, you're able to do things how you want to do them. And, part of me when I started this is that, I can do it exactly how I want to do it. And I don't have, average Joe over there saying, well, I don't like the way you said this and we need to do this. And, but why don't you do something, with your face this time? Maybe wear glasses or I don't know. I want to do it the way I want to do it. I don't, if nobody likes it, okay, no big deal. But, I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, and actually something like your podcast, right, which it does help a lot of authors. So Shelor Selected and other podcasts are very helpful because we couldn't do this 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and now we can become marketers ourselves, right? And so, with the internet, with social media, you can also market on. I try to use LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and things like that. And so I'm learning, and there's so many ways of communicating, reaching out. And I also can run my own ads. Like right now, I have an ad on Facebook, and I'm spending about $20 a day on this Facebook ad, and it hits people in Japan and the UK, and it's fun. Like actually, I get comments on the ad. It's almost like just having a little conversation. And then on the ad, when people, if they make a comment that maybe needs a response, I will respond right on the ad in the comments section. And I even put one of my podcasts as a comment on the ad saying, and if you want to know a little bit more about me, here's a podcast I did. And so people can go there. And so it's all it's sort of neat the way you can media and do it yourself and experiment. And I've really enjoyed that. I've learned a lot in the last year about the internet and social media because, like I say, I'm self-published, so I have to market my own book, right?
Is social media the biggest way to market right now?
Yeah, I would include podcasts in that. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the great things of doing this too. And you said you coming on here, but I'm getting to talk with intellectuals like yourself and just different topics that I've never done before, and that I just kind of just got on my own based on what I try to read at least one book a month, and I'm an avid podcast listener, and that. But just actually talking it out with somebody gets these thoughts out. It makes me think a different way, and it makes things more clear, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And it's pretty fun
for sure. And I've been really impressed by you and many other podcasters. Like you seem to be like a very curious, open-minded group of people who are making things happen. And young podcasters to older ones, it doesn't matter. They're really making things happen. And I've been really impressed, truly.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to be, just because it's so much fun. I mean, for me, it's fun. I mean, you're learning new stuff, and you're also, I don't know. I mean, it's just, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but it's just, it's a lot of fun, and that you just changing the way you think, and and you're open about things. Just because you think one way, but you might find out there's a better way to it, or a better thought or process of it, and and I think that's kind of we're talking about social media too, and I think that's where people can go down the wrong rabbit holes, and somebody might post out a tweet of something they just read, but it was not a legitimate source, and then all of a sudden you have just a whole list of comments going down there, and it's just like, this ain't even true. What are y'all talking about? But I hope that made sense. I kind of think I kind of rambled right there, but it's good times.
But it also takes some courage to do a podcast like you're doing right now, and for me too, because we're out there, we're broadcasting ourselves a bit, right? But that's I like to throw out a quote by Helen Keller, who said, it's just this quote just blew my mind when I heard this. She said that security is mainly a superstition. In other words, if you really want to make things happen in life, you have to face some insecurity. You got to be brave. So doing podcasts or even writing a book, like I know when I first pressed the button to publish this book, I didn't have an editor, right? So I had to count on friends and family and others, making sure the grammar was pretty good and all that. As soon as I pressed that button, I thought, whoa, this is out there now, right? And I even found a couple mistakes that readers sent me on. Like I missed a quotation mark, and I think there was a word in there. Oh, one of the characters' name was messed up. I got the character Ahmed messed up with the character Tavan, which was actually a big mistake. It was in one of chapter 33 or something. Tavan was already dead, so it couldn't be him. It had to be a man, right? So one of my friends read it and said, "Mark, you got a mistake here. You better." So the good thing about ebooks and self-publishing is you can go back in there. Luckily, he was one of the first readers, this person, and you can actually edit the book. And then any new readers will see the improved version. And also even the older readers will get, the ones who have already downloaded the book will get a notice saying they can upgrade so it's sort of cool that way, but it makes you nervous because, and also I'm not a genetic scientist, right? So I'm putting all these things out there thinking, whoa, what if somebody expert from Harvard, like David Sinclair or whatever, reads this and says, this is bogus, right?
Yeah.
So I did worry about that, but then again, I thought, you know what, if you took all the top scientists in the world, geneticists, genomicists, whatever you want to call them, and you put them in a room and you said, okay, project 200 years in the future. I don't know. I think it's all going to be science fiction. Like nobody's going to know for sure anyway. So, so it's fun, but it's there's a certain insecurity from doing it.
Yeah, there definitely is. Just like you said, the first time when I was getting ready to do this podcast, or just anything new in life, there's always some insecurities about it. And just, once you press the button and you are crossing that door, it's like, well, we did it. I don't know where this is going to go from here.
Yeah, that's right.
But in the end, hopefully you're glad that you did it. And it's good stuff. One thing I wanted to ask you about was that a lot of people, when we talk about, getting a runner's high, but, writers seem to get writer's block. Is that something you dealt with when you were writing this book?
A little bit. And so in that case, I would just take time off, maybe go for a run or watch television or just get away from the computer. And that usually worked out. And then you can incubate, as you know, with fitness and CrossFit and running and things like that. You can, it's almost like meditative, right? So you can get out there and do your thing, whether it's biking or running or swimming or whatever. And you can think about things, and usually it'll percolate up from your subconscious, some fresh ideas. And then you get back, could be a couple of days later to the computer, and you start afresh, and usually there's no more writer's block, at least for me. I haven't had any like an extended writer's block where I couldn't do anything for several months or whatever. No, that hasn't happened.
I gotcha. Yeah, I've always heard that, when people actually tell you to go sleep on it or go take a break, it's like your brain just kind of resets and it just comes
For sure.
to you. Yeah. It's pretty interesting just how that works. Well, so you also do some painting too. Have you also? You've always done that your whole life, or
no? So writing and painting came to be middle age and later. So again, to your listeners, you never know. You could be a creative person. It might be within you. It took me a long time to find my career. I was a very slow developer, and I withdrew and switched out of a couple programs and jobs before I just knew it wasn't my genuine self, and I didn't feel comfortable in that career. So when I finally got into teaching, I really loved it, working more with humans and coaching also. I really love the coaching, especially cross-country running, which is just fun trying to recruit people and convince them to go through all the pain and the mud and all that, right? So that was so much fun, just convincing high school students and whatnot to do that. And then trying to build a team out of it, try to impress upon it. It's not just an individual sport. We got a team here. We got your junior boys division. You need 4 boys, right? And if we don't get 4 boys across the finish line, we're nothing. We're not even, we don't count as a school. They won't even know we're here. So you top 3, you're good runners, but we need a 4th and even a 5th would be good for insurance, right? And I really went to town with that stuff. I really enjoyed the psychology of it. And like, for example, with the 4th runner, I would tell the kids, we should be admiring, we should be worshiping the 4th runner, whoever that is on your team, whoever 4th across the finish line, you should go up to them and say, thank you. You made our team. And the 4th runner is so pivotal. Not only did they make the team, they can make the team improve a lot because like the first, let's say the top runner, they might finish 3rd in a race and then 2nd. Their position isn't going to change that much. They may be 1 point better. That's good. It might be a lot better race for them, but it's only 1 point better for the school. But the 4th runner who's finishing like 110th in the race, if they have a good race, the next race, they could be 65th. So they picked up like, what's that, 30, 45 positions in the point total for the school. So a little bit of improvement for that 4th runner. And then maybe a 5th runner who tries to become the 4th runner and a 6th runner, all of those runners, the average runners, who, by the way, are out there in pain for longer than the top runners, right?
Yeah.
It's the only sport I know where the less talented people are on the court for longer, and it's painful. So it's not really a blessing. It's like you're handling more pain and for longer, more suffering, right? So we really tried to send that message, and I think even organizations out there, like business organizations, could learn from that. Is that every organization has its stars and their naturals and whatnot, and that's great. The accolades to them, but you got to really make sure your average employees who can be working really hard and doing their best are recognized and feel like they're just as important to the team.
Yeah, I ran 2 years of cross country in high school, and I kind of got talked into it. We were told we should do it for basketball, and I just, I run 5Ks for CrossFit or whatever I need to do as far as that goes. But just I don't have the body type I'm not a runner. I'm 5'6" on a tall day, and most of them are long and kind of got more length to them and have a better stride than I could ever get. But talking about coaching and cross country, what would you say your coaching philosophy is as far as that? Being a 4th runner and promoting them.
Yeah. So mine is I really try to get to know the athletes as individuals. So just get to know everybody singularly, treat them like a unique person. And that really has helped me with coaching. I'm also writing a book on this. I have a book that I've been sort of crafting because my daughter, I mentioned, I was coaching her and then she motivated me to run. And then I started coaching a lot. And then I, of course, myself got into triathlon. So I'm writing sort of a book. I'm trying to make it fun with some good anecdotes and all that, but also some serious advice for training and coaching. So that's my next project. I think I'm going to do that before I do a sequel to the science fiction novel.
We're talking about training and stuff. I mean, do you promote any specific diets for cross country runners? I mean, I like to talk about diets just with all this.
Yeah, I'm not too. I mean, that's an interesting topic because like even some runners are pretty quirky as to what they take like 2 hours before the race or 1 hour before the race, right? They all seem to be unique. As long as they can find something, like if it's a peanut butter bagel, then you go for it, as long as it's worked for you in the past. So I'm pretty open as long as they experiment and find something that's good for them, but more like long-term diet. That would be much more important, I think, for long distance triathloning and long distance trail, like the diet leading up to that race, like for several days. But just generally for diet, like just as an athlete or as a person, obviously I don't promote too much junk food, but, or, like as an adult, too much drinking or anything like that. Certainly no smoking. That doesn't seem to jive well with aerobics.
I've heard that.
So that's some basic advice, but no, just a combination of carbohydrates, proteins, and whatnot, and even some fat in the diet, I think is fine. But I do know that there are other athletes who feel differently, and they're very strict on their diets, whether it's vegetarian or whatnot. One of my triathlon buddies is like that. He's very good, so maybe I should listen to him.
No, there's I always say I'm an enemy of nutrition just because there's so many different things, like you just said, you can do, and some people say you shouldn't do, and it's just almost just like, all right, I'll figure out what works for me and just work with that, because what works for me might not work for yourself or what have you.
Yeah, although I've made mistakes. Like one mistake I did make for about 2 or 3 races in a row, I tried to lower my body weight because that is a factor in say a half marathon or a marathon or a longer triathlon. So just try to drive down your body weight. But I made the mistake of trying to do that even a few days before the race, trying to, not take too many carbohydrates and just lose another pound or two, which was really stupid because I had a couple of races where I just like went really flat the second part of the race, like had no energy. And I was thinking like, what's wrong? You're nice and light. You should be. And, obviously what happened is I lowered my glycogen reserves in my muscles, and I was sort of almost like hitting the wall in a half marathon, right? Oh, no. And stupid. We all learn by mistakes. Another stupid thing I did, your listeners might want to hear this one. This is a funny one. At the World Championships in the triathlon, I went twice. So the second time I went was in Switzerland, and I never made it through the race. What happened is, I got into the swim. And 15 minutes before the swim, they announced no wetsuits because the water in Lake Geneva was too warm. They were actually worried about people overheating. And so I thought, oh my God, I haven't trained really without a wetsuit. And I turned to my friend and said, I think I'm done here. But I tried. I got in the water, and swimming with a wetsuit, I'm flat and nice and, I'm pretty efficient. I'm not a great swimmer. I'm really not. That's probably why I was training with a wetsuit. Right?
I agree with that.
But without a wetsuit, my legs were dropping down in the water. Like I could almost see them. If I turn my head down, I could see my feet. And oh my God. So I made it. You have to go 1,500 meters. And it was actually windy and wavy too, which made it worse. I mean, it wasn't even an out and back course. We were into the wind more than anything. Yeah. And I made it about 500 meters. I was trying dog paddles, side strokes, swimming underwater.
Oh no.
I was exhausted, and I put my hand up and said, rescue me. Like I didn't want to kill myself out there. And I thought I was going to kill myself. So I'm not going to. So I learned a strong lesson, learned how to swim without a wetsuit. And I'm going and now I couldn't train last year there was no competition, no qualifiers. So I had no chance to get back at it. But I have been training without a wetsuit, learned my lesson. And I am looking forward to trying to requalify next year, which would mean 2 years from now in Spain. I'm going to try to do this all over again. I'll still be in the 60 to 65-year-old age group, but I'll know how to swim without a wetsuit.
What does it take to qualify, or how do you qualify?
You have to, in Canada, they have a number of these ITU races qualifiers. So when I qualified, I went to the Montreal race and I finished second in my age group. So they took the top 3, I think, in that race. They send 10 people from every age group. So top three in that race went. Then they would have another race out west and pick a couple people from like BC, and then they'd have the Toronto one. They pick 3 or 4 from that race. So you have to go to one of the sanctioned races and qualify, finishing the age group. So that's how I got in. I snuck in through Montreal.
Nice. Well, what's it like? Besides, getting out there, and not being able to swim without a wetsuit, but what's the rest of that experience like representing Canada?
It was awesome because I did it the year before in Amsterdam, and actually it was a funny story there too. I qualified for that because they canceled the swim. So I was qualifying in Ottawa, and I was really nervous about the swim because I'm just not a good swimmer, and it looked like they were going to not allow wetsuits again. I was really worried about that, and luckily that night a storm went through. And it caused the sewage to back up in the swimming area.
Ooh.
So for my race, as I was getting ready for the start of the race, the guy next to me said, "Well, we're in a duathlon today." And I said, "Well, what do you mean by duathlon?" He said, "Yeah, there's no swim." And I tried to contain my smile, right? I'm like, "Really?" Yeah, they're replacing the swim by run. So it'd be run, bikes, run. And running's my strong point, right? I'm thinking, wow. So that's how I got into the World Championships that year. So it worked in my favor. But I was much better prepared the second year when I actually didn't finish the race just because of the swim. Yeah.
Mm. Huh. I bet so. Well, I respect what you're doing. I mean, you're doing, like you said, you were a slow developer, and it's something that, I seem like if I find something I really enjoy, I find it kind of later in life. And that, like you said earlier, that just because, you're at a certain age, that doesn't mean you still can't do it. And,
exactly.
I respect it. And I hope to be, your age, or maybe this technology takes off, and, keep my age where I'm at now and still be able to be athletic and be able to, doing triathlons like you are. But
yeah, that's the nice thing about the age group thing. And just back on creativity, to you people who may be listening to this, you can be creative. There's lots of things you can do, whether it's creating music, plays, books, drawing. You never know. There's probably something inside you. And once you find your spot in life, it's sort of that sweet spot, you'll probably start expressing yourself with your friends, your grandchildren, whatever, or beyond that. And it's great because if you can express yourself and impact other people in a positive way, what better way is it to live, right?
I like that. I think we should take this home on that note, end it on a positive vibe here. Your book is Age Decoded. Tell everyone where they can find the ebook or find your social media, or
Sure.
how they get in touch with you before we get off here.
Yeah, sure. So it's Age Decoded. There's a hyphen in there, age hyphen decoded.
Okay.
And if they just go to their favorite retailer, like
Amazon,
the top 2 right now are Amazon and Apple for sales, but Indigo, Kobo, and there's some European ones too. Anyway, if they just search for that, it'll pop up. It's got a nice blue cover, and you'll see my name on there, Mark Ryall. They can order the book that way. I think it's about $10 American.
Okay.
But it's just an ebook right now. So that's how they can. In terms of me, I don't really have a website. I know people say you're supposed to have an author website. I don't really have one, but I do have a pretty strong social media presence on. I don't know if you provide that with the podcast, but
I will.
Maybe we can give them a couple links there. But Quora is probably the best one if they want to get to know me a little better. I've written a few books of answers across a lot of topics like exercise, triathloning, and also the science of aging. I enjoy answering questions on there and having a bit of fun with it. I also golf, so a lot of my golf ones are pretty quirky and funny. So if they go to Quora and they type in Mark Ryall, MarkRyall, they'll see a lot of funny or insightful answers on there. That's a good way to get to know me a bit better.
That's great. You said, are you on Twitter, Amazon, and all, or not Amazon, Instagram, and all that good
Yes,
stuff?
I am. LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram. I can provide you those links if you want. Yeah.
Do you got plans to do an audiobook version?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. I would like to do that too. So I've been exploring that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm more of an audiobook kind of guy. I can do multiple things like while I'm listening to as well. So
Yes.
that's what I try to do.
Great idea. Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you want to say, or maybe a positive message why you wrote the book, or anything before we hop off?
yeah, like I just wanted to say that thing about creativity again. Just emphasize that all people have creativity within them. They express it in different ways. There's so many ways in our life that you can be creative. Creative just means expressing yourself and trying to do it probably positively for other people, sharing with others. So I just would encourage everyone to give it a shot, and don't think you're too old or don't think you're too much this or that. Don't let people pigeonhole you. You can do this stuff and you'll find a lot of joy in it, and you'll have a great impact on others, and it'll live beyond you. Unless they invent a cure for aging, then it may not live beyond you because you may not die. Okay, that's my final message.
Love it. All right. Dr. Mark Ryall, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I appreciate this. This was a great time. I enjoyed this.
Okay, thank you so much. That was a lot of fun, Chris.
Good deal. All right. Bye, everybody.